loud one. Okay, just a few minutes, we're nearly ready. In case you don't know, my name is Christian Sasse. I run SassePhoto. It's an educational channel for wildlife, and we are out here near Reading looking at a very rare event, a little hawklet growing up in an eagle's nest. It's the second time we're seeing this. By the way, happy 4th of July, happy Independence Day, and we'll be ready in just a few moments. Thank you. Yeah, we're just picking up the noise a little bit from the battery. I'm just going to bring the camera over a bit back so it doesn't pick up so much noise. I'm just realizing that. So little things that we're just correcting. A second. Some minor corrections here. Before we start. That should be a bit better from the sound. I don't get too much from the fans here. Okay, so YouTube's on? Oh, the eagle is fine because it'll come. It'll come. It means it's on. Oh. We're on. We're just debating whether we're on or not. But we will be in a second. We will be in a second. Now we are. Okay, excellent. We are. All ready? Yep. Okay, 1 second. So we are ready. Wonderful. Okay, well, all my American friends, happy 4th of July, happy Independence Day. It's wonderful to be all out here, and it's very exciting to see all of you here on a special day. I've never been able to broadcast here on the 4th of July. First of all, I'd like to say happy 4th of July, happy Independence Day, and congratulations to all my American friends. I would also like to say thank you very much to our sponsor, that is the DVE store in Washington State. They produce videos, equipment and audio, and without them this wouldn't be possible because it's unfortunately it's a new technology and it's horrendously expensive to run this. So I'm very grateful. And by the way, those of you who've been so kind to give so many donations, it's been absolutely wonderful, and to receive that, because it really helps keeping the stream alive. So before I introduce eagle biologist David Hancock in a moment, and we have some words also of appreciation to say to you, I will just give you a quick overview of the nest and really the reason why we're all out here. So just hang on a moment, be patient, and everything will run its way. Thank you. So you can see hiding behind there is our little hawklet, and you should be able to see it on screen too now. So they're all posing for you. Quite fantastic. So we just need a moment. Yeah. David? You're not live yet. Okay, we're just running things in the background here. Let me see. 1 second, David. Okay, you ready? Oops, we're saying oops here. We're saying oops. Okay, so David, just one second, David. We haven't yet got David live. We still have it on the one. So as he comes in, we'll get the crowds getting excited now. Let's just wait. They should be getting excited any moment now as he comes in. Let's wait. Oh, there he comes. Oh my goodness, we've got a lot of people here. I'm sorry, we can hardly hear you now. There's about 10,000 people crowded here. David, yeah, he's coming, don't worry.
We'll calm the crowds down so I can...
Yeah, we're trying to calm them down. Oh, it's incredible. Hey, calm down, people. Yeah, they're gone. Okay, here's David.
Well, good evening. It's such a pleasure to be here near Redding, California, and to be kind of the guests of what is called the Redding Eagle Group, headed by Terry Lillier, who I got to know years ago because she was following one of the live eagle cams that had been put in partly at the Hancock Wildlife Foundation's kind of advice, and then she wrote a book about her young eagles, and I got the honor of actually writing the foreword for her book. So I've known Terry for quite some time. When Terry, on her surveys this year, was watching one of her eagle nests, she found that not only did it have two quite large eaglets in it, but it had one additional smaller bird. And on closer examination, she realized it was a red-tailed hawk, the very thing that we'd have happened about 3 or 4 years ago up in Sydney that caused a kind of a world furore about how great predator eagles could have taken a young red-tailed hawk and instead of eating it, which they would normally do, decided to rear it. So we're here at the invitation of Terry and her group. I want to thank you, and also we're here at the beck and of Kit Harvey and her cousin, because we're staying at Kit's house. So that's kind of marvelous. So I really don't want to take a lot of the time right now. I want you to look at the nest. So are you going to focus in close on the nest? We're still having a little technical difficulty.
Okay, that's right. So also don't forget the Eagle Group here.
I did.
You did? Okay.
I said that.
Okay, and I'll quickly join my friend David Hancock. So again, thank you to Terry, and thank you for to our Eagle Group here, the local one, and also to Russ Weatherby, who...
Yes, the park's biologist, and he was really quite marvelous. He gave the permits and so on so that we could come in and do this. So wonderful example here. We're really one of the surviving groups from the great California, Redding, California fire. This eagle nest survived the fire, and everything is starting to grow up around it, and life is regenerating itself. So we're kind of lucky to be here.
Very lucky.
Okay,
so it's David and I are again. We are the traveling wildlife people, and yeah, I'm very honored to be actually partnering with David for a long time now. So
yeah, and we'll talk about the background.
We'll talk about the background
bird if they haven't heard it already.
Yeah, and I would also like to say thank you very much. We already got some donations, and all those of you who have donated, I'm really greatly appreciate that. It's something so special. It makes this broadcast possible, which we're doing here in the middle of nowhere. It's so dusty you can't believe it. You have to be so careful when you walk here. And we Canadians are actually not used to this, right?
No, we're not used to the heat, I'll tell you that.
Yeah. Well, anyway, we're so excited to do this on your special July 4th Independence Day. So we'll go and zoom in now. Hopefully the nothing overheats and it should be fine. We've got Kit in the background and Jamie helping us, which is absolutely wonderful to keep the stream going. So enjoy it.
Good. Thank you. We'll follow up in a few minutes with some background.
Okay, so this is the close-up again. Let me just adjust the lighting a little bit for you. Let's see, because we are so... let me just change the ISO. It's so bright at the moment. Yeah, that's better. That's better. So our... Sorry, I must come over to the microphone. So again, our little hawklet is hiding in there, but you can see it. Actually, we got incredibly close, a close view of them. And again, we're lucky to have this passage actually to look directly at the nest, which is quite special. So I'm going to just let you enjoy it. Some of you have been asking, will it fledge and when will it fledge? And the answer is, of course, well, when it will fledge.
Yeah.
So that is the answer. We don't actually know. However, I can tell you the good news, and this is for all the people who have kindly donated. I'm so grateful, and I've seen some of you have donated already, and I'd like to thank you for that. Do send an email or a Gmail to SassePhoto@gmail.com, and I know Osprey Mama is taking good care of this channel. Thank you so much for doing all that. I so greatly appreciate your incredible dedication of hours putting all that together. So in the meantime, Jamie actually and I have taken some incredible close-ups, beautiful close-ups, and you may have seen one of the photographs as a thumbnail here already. David?
Well, I was asked we should kind of recap how this all came about. I mean, how does a major predatory bird like the bald eagle get to rear quite a small red-tailed hawk? The eagles, the male and female, are probably 8 to 12 pounds, and the red-tailed hawk is probably about 2.5 pounds. So normally the eagle would prey upon red-tailed hawks, and in this case it's kind of awesome. What we believe has happened is pretty likely the case. The bald eagle went in and took the young red-tail from a red-tail nest, took it back to its nest to feed to its young. But, and the but is the big question, but I think it's pretty likely, but the bald eagle, having dropped and left the young red-tail in the nest, then turned around, and as the young red-tail turned around and begged for food. Or the eagle, as I kind of think is even more important, turned around again and looked at the young hawk, and it has a curved beak. And this is, to me, probably the main key to which that triggers the nurture versus the tear apart and let's eat it. And so the eagle looked at that curved beak of the small red-tail and felt, I gotta feed that. And the begging call of the young red-tail also elicited a feeding response, and so Ma went and fed it some other food, probably fish, because this is a pair of eagles that are on a beautiful lake, and they're predominantly fish eaters. So we have this really dilemma of wildlife for all the predatory birds. When do you tear the heads off the prey in the nest and feed it to your other young? And is it you're going to feed them your last hatched eaglet and feed it to the first hatched? Which is a great conflict that must happen to the bird. Or do you feed both of them? And in this case, even though it's a red-tailed hawk, that, I think, hooked beak gave the trigger to give the feeding response as opposed to the tearing the head off and eating it response. So that's my interpretation of how this comes about. It's a marvelous kind of how conflicts in nature sometimes turn out for the better. The last time we had this, about 3 years ago in Sydney, it turned out for the better. The young red-tail fledged, flew around the nest 8 or 10 days, or in the neighborhood of the nest, learned to catch mice. We put mice and voles out for it, and a few road-killed squirrels, and it learned to come down and grab them all. So, in all likelihood, there's a good chance this little guy is also going to make it, provided he gets to fledge. So that's going to be 5, 6, 7 days at the maximum, I think. So we'll let you ask questions if you want.
Yeah, go ahead. And thanks, Mark, for just putting in. I've darkened it a little bit. Sometimes difficult to see exactly the right exposure, so I've actually made it a little bit darker for you. I hope it works okay. You should be able to see you saw some flapping of one of the eaglets right next to the hawklet, who again is hiding just behind that branch. We do have a little bit of a tiny breeze here, which matters a lot because, well, if we have a strong breeze, then of course the eagles feel like catching fish because they can use the wind as an elevator back to the nest, because it is quite steep always up to the nest. It is quite high. So we're actually grateful for every breeze, and at the moment we have no mosquitoes here, which is unheard of. Yesterday we were covered. I don't know what has happened. Maybe you know, the park ranger has removed the mosquitoes at night, but it's just so wonderful, you know. So they are taking good care of us here. In the meantime, also the crowd that you heard in the beginning has dispersed and moved towards the nest. No, I was joking. That's a bad joke, I know. No, they've all disappeared. Anyway, so we're going to let you enjoy it. I'm just going to, in the meantime, I'm going to remove the other camera and walk around a bit so you can see what it actually looks like. So just enjoy it. Yeah, go ahead.
Before you do that, I noticed Mum was out on what we call Eagle Point, which is about a third of a mile off to the west. And then she disappeared about half an hour ago, and now I see she's back sitting on her point. And it's the favorite perch because it looks both ways around a point into two different bays. Perfect place for being able to examine water surfaces for maximum food source. So she's back in a good place to catch something, which is of course what we want to see, her come up from the water and bring up a nice fish and feed these three young. So there we are.
Okay, once again, thank you so much for the kind donations. That's very much appreciated. So I'm just going to let it stream a bit. In the meantime, I'm going to dismantle my one camera so I can actually walk around and show you what our campsite here looks like. So I'm going to be silent for a while. You just hear the microphone a little bit. So just enjoy the view. A little bit shaky now. That's part of it. You're going to hear a bit of cluck cluck now. So we can do this actually. And see if we can actually show this. Yeah, this is rather unique. That is rather unique. Just going to switch. Okay, so I'm on camera 1 now, also with the microphone. I hope I haven't lost live feed. Still okay? I think we're still okay. Everything seems fine. So there's David Hancock, by the way, as usual behind his cameras, who's just been talking as eagle biologist David Hancock. We're very lucky to have him here. You can also see there's been lots of attention in the last days around this nest, and you may have seen some of the news coverage. There's Kit. And that's Jamie. Wonderful help. Without them it wouldn't be possible. And there's the gear, by the way. That's the 800. Looking at it. Oh, that's my phone ringing at the moment. But no worries about it. I'll look at it in a moment. If that's Osprey Mama trying to give me a signal, just hang on. I'll look at it in a second. And, oh gosh, I'm just going to make my phone silent. 1 second. Because that's not the intention to have it. Okay, I switched the sound off. That's better. So I'm just going to show you what it looks like here. So again, thanks to the DVE store. So you can see I've got 2 screens there. You won't be able to. That's screen number 1. That's screen number 2 where I can monitor the live thing. This is the encoder that is actually broadcasting. It's incredible dust here. That's my iPhone looking at your comments in both YouTube and Facebook. And that is a switch that switches from one camera to the next. That there is the battery that kindly Jamie has carried in for me today, which is remarkable. He runs triathlon, and I can tell you he was so fast, he actually broke my record out here. And that here, away from the dust are some cables, and that's actually the Netgear that is transmitting here to the local AT&T network. So quite a complex setup, as you can see, especially with all the dust. That is the tripod that I'm using for the video camera. And that's more or less what it looks like. And you can see, as I walk around a little bit, straight ahead there, that's the nest there. There we are, looking straight at the nest right in front. So we are very far from the nest. there's no way we can, they're both awake now, I can see that. So that's wonderful. So I'm going to switch back to the other camera very quickly. So we're back on camera 2, which is the close-up camera. And I'm going to, in the meantime, try and put this camera back on its tripod. So you're going to hear a little bit of microphone noise, but I don't see another way at the moment of doing this. That's a cluck, and that means it's stable back in. Okay, so let's see. Oh, well, now you're getting quite the performance. Quite the performance. You see a little bit of wing flapping. So you should be able to see all three now, if you look carefully. So the hawk is on the right, hiding behind that little branch or so. And then the two are just awake. I think they're getting hungry. But we have not so far seen the parents, right? Not today.
On the distance.
Oh, so David is just saying from the back here that he has actually seen them. It's remarkably quiet here. It's remarkably quiet, even on the lake. For July 4th, we expected to be a lot louder, but that's only much better.
I suspect everybody is eating hot dogs.
Everybody's eating hot dogs. Okay, very good. Okay, hang on. I'm just going to read the comments now. 1 second. Osprey Mama, I am reading your comments now. Okay, so thank you for the donation. Thanks for Osprey Mama for giving me all those notes. That is absolutely helpful. So that's been Glenn Hazelwoody, Carrie Miller, and Elizabeth F. And Kindle Cats, oh my goodness, how can I read this word? Gold, asks, how likely is it that there's recognition between the red-tailed hawk, lit, and these eaglets after they all flew? Let me just see, I'm sure there's a spelling here. Is that there's recognition between the red-tailed hawklet. Oh, I see. Hawklet, yeah. Okay, come, David.
I think what they're getting at, Christian, is will there be a continuing relationship between the eagles, the dominant creatures in this nest, and the small red-tailed hawk? I mean, once the red-tailed fledges, will there be a continuing bond? There is a kind of acceptance. I'm not quite sure how the bonding is. But there's certainly an acceptance right now of the little red-tail. I mean, he's not eaten by his bigger brothers and sisters. So whether that relationship is likely going to continue after the fledging, I very much doubt. We didn't see very much of it when we witnessed the same kind of thing at the Sydney nest. The little red-tail flew around for about 10-12 days, and he'd fly into the nest, grab food from underneath his big brothers and sisters, but he didn't seem to have any great relationship other than the fact that they were standing over the food and he got to steal it from them. And I think that was it. He went off and he learned to catch both voles and mice that we provided, and he'd pick up road-killed squirrels that we put out for him. So I don't think there will be a continuing relationship. They have totally different kind of biologies. The little red-tail is a small mammal killer, basically, and also reptiles, as chipmunks and little mammals, and also reptiles like lizards and snakes, and even small birds, but predominantly red-tailed hawks across North America eat small rodents. And I think he'll probably have an innate hunting adaptive ability. He'll be looking for things running on the ground and in the grasses. That will be his relationship for food. And the eagles, of course, are going to be flying north 1,000, 1,500 miles, in fact, probably 1,500 miles, to northern BC or Alaska for their early meals. And so they're going to be looking for what is already lining the rivers of the Alaska in the Alaska Panhandle rivers. They're lined now with dead, spawned out salmon. And it's historically what nearly all the southern eagles go to do. Even the eagles in British Columbia go north. They leave Fraser Valley and they go north to northern BC and Alaska because the buffet is set. It takes no energy for these young eagles to actually get food from these all the lined rivers are lined up with dead salmon, spawned out salmon. So that's what the eagle will do. The red-tail will probably forage in this area, may even migrate to Colorado or somewhere else, but he's going to be looking for small rodents.
In the meantime, we've got more donations coming in. Thanks, David. Yeah, please stay here. You're going to be bombarded with lots of questions here, so you're not going to escape here. I have to keep my friend here. So I just quickly, in between donations, thank you to Katie48, Terry Green, thank you very much, Amanda Price, and also Sherry Matthews, thank you so much, so appreciated. That brings us, by the way, to the next question, actually from Terry Green. Dr. Hancock, will Tuffy hunt for prey appropriate for him, or will he try to catch fish?
No, as I was just saying, red tails are predominantly small mammal, mice, voles. They'll eat chipmunks, they'll eat small squirrels, and also lizards and snakes and even young birds. That's one of the reasons they hatch and develop at this time of year. There's also a lot of naive young birds around, flopping around that haven't quite learned to fly properly. And those are easy prey to initiate a hawk into hunting. So that will be the destiny of the red tail, to hunt for small prey, small birds, small mammals, small reptiles. Not so the fish, the eagles. They'll be looking for initially dead, spawned out salmon. Absolutely buffets of it, rivers lined with it in Alaska. And then as we go into the winter, we get into November and then into December, the north, all of the north, freezes up. And there may still be some salmon in those northern rivers, but it gets under ice and it's no longer available. So that's when all the eagles are forced south, and they undertake a migration south to, and particularly around where we live in Vancouver, British Columbia. We'll get 35,000 eagles down into the Fraser Valley. Sometimes we'll get 10 to 15,000 eagles at one day on the Harrison River. That's where we have our Harrison Bald Eagle Festival. So these birds have pretty much been ingrained into the kind of food that they're easily going to find, and been ingrained into a behavior pattern that leads them to where that food source is. And in the case of the eagles, it's a long way from here. It's 1,000, 1,500, even 2,000 miles to where the spawned out salmon are already laying on the banks of rivers. But they're going to go there. They're going to go and get that food. And it's a downhill glide all the way. Now, some people have trouble getting their head around that. But if you know about Western North America, the movement of air is always from the Pacific Ocean across the continent. That means you've got a constant air mass moving up against a 5,000-foot pillar of mountains. And those mountains are about 5,000 feet all the way from California to Alaska. And that air lifts up automatically. And these birds with these huge great wings just put those wings up and they soar up, and then they glide downhill all the way to Alaska. So it's I don't want to say it's effortless, but it doesn't take a lot of energy for them to get all the way to Alaska and do it in less than a week. So I think they have two different life patterns ahead of them. The eagle, a migration to follow easy food supply, and the red tail following where time has taught them. They're also going to find young and vulnerable bird and small mammal species for them.
Very good. I'm just going to give David one break, but the questions are pouring in for you now. The next one is from Maureen R. You already answered the question about the hunting fish and so on, the instinct. But there's another very interesting question that's related to different species. Will he perceive eagles as enemies, and conversely, will the eagle chicks perceive the other hawk as different? That's a very good question.
Oh dear.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I'll start that off with, oh dear. Yeah, that's probably and not a good basic resolution. Eagles generally consider red-tailed hawks as prey, and they will attempt to catch them and kill them and eat them, particularly eating the young out of red-tailed nests. So the quicker this young red-tail gets fledged and realizes these ugly big neighbors of his, siblings, are not good friends, the better, because sidling up to an adult or a different eagle that doesn't know him, like these two chicks know him, they accept him totally. I mean, he sidles right up against them, but he's not going to get away with sidling up against another wild eagle. And you can kind of see this already. I'm not as worried about this option as I might be, because if you see generally, the young redtail goes out on the end of a branch, and he spends most of his time as far away from these two eaglets as possible. He's like tempting them. He walks out onto the end of a very thin branch where they're not going to follow. I mean, he only weighs about probably 2 pounds, 2.5 pounds, maybe 3, but I don't think so. It looks quite a small bird, probably a male. So I think he's already senses this precarious life that he's somehow been brought into, that somehow it's not quite right to have brothers as big as this, and so he's keeping a bit away from them. That's at least my interpretation of this.
Okay, but in the meantime, more donations have come in. Thank you very much to KH and also to Heather. That is so kind of you. Very nice. So we got more questions coming in. 1 second. Let me see. Yeah, does Tuffy actually interact with the eagles very much? That's the question. What did we see so far, David?
Well, there's very little interaction between the two species that we're able to observe. I mean, it'd be nice to have a camera in the nest to more intimately see it, but we're about 500 feet from this nest. We're nowhere really near it. I mean, Christian has this 1,000mm lens, an 800 with an extender on it, and we both have good zoom lenses on our video cameras. So we're able to pull this in quite close, but we don't see a lot of beak preeking and mutual preening, but they do rub up against each other. I mean, they are not, the little guy is not in any great panic, but he's got enough sense to say, I think I'll just stand out on the end of that branch rather than spend most of my day sitting next to what might be two very hungry eaglets. So I take it that he's kind of wise about something here.
Yeah, I've just, by the way, zoomed in incredibly much on the central stem of the tree, and you can see the hawk is just hiding behind that. I've zoomed in so far, you should be able to see him. He's on the other side because the wind is blowing towards us, actually, and they're looking keen out to see if some food is coming in, I presume. I don't know if, David, have you picked
No, I have not. I've not seen the female anywhere. She was around to the west side of the lake here, and she hasn't come back. But of course, this is also their July 4th day. The lake out in front of us actually has had a lot of people on it and boats all day long, and there's several eagle nests on this lake and another 19 pairs of ospreys. So this is a very, very productive lake, and it could easily be that along the shorelines, because there's a lot more people here today than we've seen earlier in the week, it could be that there's just less shallow waters that aren't being intruded in by people today. So that's just the way it is. These birds don't have to get fed every day, and they may be going to draw on their reserves today. On the other hand, they probably very likely were fed first thing this morning. That's the most logical time. From our point of view, however, it's all backlit. We're looking straight into the sun, so it's almost impossible for us to photograph them in the morning. So we opted for the afternoon. It just happens to be, this is probably not as good an afternoon as we might have had earlier in the week, although even yesterday at 5 to 6 when we broadcast, or the day before, they were pretty quiet. It wasn't until later, after just about dark, when she actually brought in a fish. So the kids will have to just wait. I mean, that's what nature's all about. Ma and Pa have an incredibly productive lake here, and they're going to get their dinner. Just it may not be quite the time schedule that you and I might want. That's another whole thing.
Yeah, I just wanted to say quickly hello to Facebook. I've just switched to Facebook. I'm reading all this off the iPhone, so just be patient. I do save all the comments and I do read them afterwards. Hi to Mohammed, Diana, Tim Phillips, Marty Lord, Trisha Needleman, Debbie Hart, Diana Claver, Joanne Grabeau, who asked, is there any idea how old the hawk is as it close to fledging? Maybe you can say something quickly. And then also hi to Jeff. Desiree! Wonderful Desiree is also there. And Maggie Smith-Haynes, very nice, Sue Wolf, and so on. Okay, anyway, David.
Yeah, well, we have a pretty good idea. Bald eagles fledge, meaning they make their first flight, usually on the 83rd or 84th day of their life. Pretty early, really, but red-tailed hawks make their first flight at usually somewhere between 45 and 48 days. And we think this bird is probably pushing 39 to 40 days of age. It might be 38 days, but he's getting on. He's starting to have the feathers on his head get longer, and he'll look like a red-tail in another 3 or 4 days. And then it's not long after that where he's out branching, flying the neighborhood, looking for things. So anyway, that's my thought, that he's probably about 38, maybe 39 days of age. And the eaglets are about 7 weeks, maybe 7.5 weeks of age. So they got another, almost another month to go.
Okay, we'll give you just a small break. We're just going to catch a breath of water. And then, yeah, just enjoy the view for now. I'm glad it's going so well. From a technical point of view, it's always my biggest worry, I can't tell you. It's so complex building this up in the middle of nowhere, and it's behaving itself today. It's 4th of July after all. So it's very nice. Another donation has come in. Thank you very much to I think it's All Eagle, if I read it correctly, or Ali Eagle, All Eagle, thank you so much. Oh, Jolie is asking, do earthquakes affect the eagles? That's a great question.
Well, yeah, that's an interesting thing. Most animals, whether they're deer or dogs, wolves, birds, have a sense of earthquakes. It's often thought they know they're about to happen before we detect them. Whether they're sensing the tremors before we do, it's not really clearly understood, but they are sensitive to these kinds of things, and we just don't really understand what that sensitivity really is.
Well, it's an interesting question, David, because some say that eagles can sense hurricanes,
yeah,
and so on, and that birds are very sensitive to earthquakes, right?
Yeah,
so,
yeah. No, I think they are. I mean, big events of the world are going to affect mammals and birds, and they have built into their system ways of detecting them. I mean, they've gone through the evolution of the earth for hundreds of thousands, in some cases millions of years, and certainly hundreds of thousands of years, and some of these, how the different predators have been separated out one from another. So they know about these things, not necessarily just because of being frightened or maybe avoiding a hurricane or cyclone. That's known that they often do that. They get out of the area before it arrives. But there's the other whole thing, particularly about fires, forest fires, big events, of course, particularly right here. and earthquakes, they often benefit from getting prey. The prey is dislodged from where it would be hiding, and the prey runs. And in many cases, many birds depend on the annual grass fires and forest fires in the savanna areas of the world, the drier area, grass area, where they burn annually, and many of the predatory birds who will particularly eat small insects and other small birds are hovering on the very edges of the flames, and they obviously have learned to be sensitive to where there's a fire or seeing it off in miles in the distance. And birds of prey will accumulate at these places because they know they can get an easy dinner.
Yeah, David, there's a very interesting question coming in from Glenn Hazel Woody, and it actually has to do with the interaction of man with, or humans with, with raptors, and it has to do with the terrible fishing line. She said at the Haines Nest they noticed very close to the fishing river brought in a terrible fish with 8 foot of line and 4 hooks and other dangers. Has anything like this been observed here at the nest and so on? So,
well, I hate to say it, this is a relatively common incident, both for ospreys and for eagles. They pick up prey, fish in both those cases, that is kind of slightly incapacitated, floundering on the surface because it's been carrying a fish spoon or plug in its mouth for some time and it can't eat properly, and so it's acting abnormally, and that's what triggers the predators, the eagles and the ospreys, to catch them. So often they bring those fish with a plug or spoon in them, fish hook in them, to their nest. And we saw that, I guess about 4 years ago now, at the Sydney nest, where early in the season, when they were just beginning to build their nest, we saw 4 fish lines in the morning sun shine as these lines were across the nest. And we thought, oh, God, that's not very good. And then over the next month, when the nest was added to with hundreds and hundreds of sticks, these lines disappeared into the nest, and we never saw them again. And then, lo and behold, when the chicks were about 8 weeks old, 8.5, 9 weeks old, lo and behold, one chick got a noose from that line, one of the lines, around a talon, and what was really unfortunate was it was caught up against the far west side of the nest, and Mum almost always brought dinner to the east side of the nest, where the other two, because they had 3 chicks at that time, the other 2 chicks would scramble over at her landing site and take the fish, and this one, on camera, unfortunately, on camera, well, I guess fortunately, that one kept pulling and pulling, and you could see, we would zoom in with the camera and we could see that it was caught with a half hitch around its toe. And so eventually, after 4 days, we actually executed a rescue, which we don't normally do, but this was kind of an abnormal circumstance. It was a man-caused problem, fish lines, so we felt a man rescue was kind of justified. Normally, if it was a sick bird, we wouldn't have rescued it. But in this case, it was a man-caused problem. But 2 days later, when I was coming down from the nest, we released the bird and it was perfectly fine, so we left it in the nest. And I was only halfway down in the lift, down the tree, and Ma flew in and landed on that nest and screamed at us. But the next day, Ma and Pa started to build a new nest. And they raised their young, they raised all 3 babies, but before they went off on migration, they had built 3/4 of a new nest, and they didn't ever come back to that nest that had raised the 3 young, because, I'm sure the because is correct, because they saw that this nest had been violated, and in a sense, violated by me. They saw me in the nest, and they took that to be not secure, so they built a new nest and said, the heck with using that one. Now, since then, both those adults have disappeared. And it turns out that we've actually had the new pair in the same territory come back and reuse that old nest. So it didn't destroy the territory at all. Every year the territory raised young, but it took another generation of eagles to come back and use that same nest. So that's what I think will happen here, or I shouldn't say here, at places where people interfere and make a rescue or an intervention. There's always the great risk that that will end the use of that nest, and that's why we try not to do that.
Okay, I'm just going to give David a break for us. You must be so tired, David. You okay? Okay, so one of the questions is, where is the hawk? I mean, this is what you came for. So we are, of course, looking at an angle towards the nest, and it's actually on the far side at the moment. So that's why we don't see it. You could briefly see it in the beginning. That's all we can say. I mean, this is nature, and that's just the way things are. This is the fun part. We watch, and hopefully he'll come back to this side. It all depends on whatever, right? So the hawk is definitely there. We saw him a few minutes ago, and I think you briefly saw him. So that's just the question. And there's another interesting question actually for David coming in now. Just give him a second. He's going to drink some water. It's from a local. 1 second. Oh yes. It is a question actually from Jamie Anderson, who is a local here, worried about the heat. He said that he has observed that the eagles do not do very well with the heat.
Yeah, Terry Lillier and her group follow a whole pile of eagles in the Redding, Sacramento Valley area. And this eagle is about a month later than most eagles, she tells us. So normally the birds would have been earlier because it would not have been quite as hot. And sitting up there, I mean, we sitting here in the trees are terribly hot. So them sitting up on the top of that nest, they are undoubtedly cooking up there. And this may well have been a kind of defining moment and defining temperature. Will they make it in this hot weather? I can say that I'm hopeful it won't be a terribly hot next month, because it may well not bode well for these chicks. Now the red-tail is more likely to make it than the bald eagles, because he's going to be gone out of here in a week. So we just hope that these young eaglets actually can stay cool enough, and we don't get too many of these. We had 92 yesterday, and it was supposed to be 100 today, and you don't want too many 100 and 105, 10 days with them sitting out without any shade. They're just going to cook. So a good question. This is later in the season than these birds have normally adapted to. For some reason, this pair is a month late or than the other ones nearby. And it could be that it's a new pair. It could be that something caused an accident in the first laying, and they lost the eggs maybe to a raven or something, and they relayed. And the recycling takes usually about a month. So that could be what happened here. They recycled, and maybe have recycled at a time that is just not conducive in this hot country to successfully raising young. I mean, we're hoping so, but we just have to witness what happens here.
Yeah, very well. By the way, David, you're getting a lot of compliments here on your excellent narration. So very nice to have David here. Yeah, it is. So yeah. I just switched over to this camera and then back again, because my one camera actually overheats, believe it or not. I mean, we are. If you
speaking about the eaglet overheating,
the camera gives a countdown. I'm going to shut down in so many seconds, so I have time to quickly switch over. So we switched, but we have two cameras. We're actually very well. We have a lot of redundancy here, so that's the good part. So I'm just going to let you enjoy it. So at the moment, of course, what happens? It's very hot, right? I mean, David's just been commenting on that, and what do the eagles do while they lie down? And the same with the hawklet. It's active, and then they're passive again, and they preserve their energy. It's quite incredible. So at the moment, there's no breeze whatsoever, and it's just
it's just plainly hot, and it's pretty understandable why the eagle has evolved to nesting a bit earlier. It just gets too darn hot here in northern central California. I mean, we're in a desert country, and although it gets more water than I thought, it gets 20, 30 inches of rain, which is incredible, but it's so hot that whatever rain it gets, it loses it very, very quickly. So just bad extra heat.
That's a nice question. Hi, Maggie. Nice. I know my dear friend Maggie, of course, from Florida, from the Raptor Center there, has a question. How frequently are the parents bringing in food?
Yeah. Well, I hate to tell you this, Maggie, but we are not here from daybreak to sunset. So I can't really answer that. But the chicks are growing well. I mean, they happen to be late, but they seem to be growing fine. They have wing feathers that look like they're coming down normally for about a 7-week-old chick, maybe 7 weeks and 3 or 4 days. So I think they're doing fine. So I think they're getting enough food in the morning and probably late in the afternoon. When we're here in the middle of the day and late afternoon, we haven't seen a feeding for the last 3 or 4 days. We saw 1 or 2 the first couple of days, and then the last 2 days, I guess we haven't seen any.
Yeah, there's a quick question here that the Swamp 5050 is asking, how are we going to follow this nest and the hawk and eagles once you leave? Dramatic question, David.
Well, it has another dramatic element. I'm kind of hobbled around here, and I'm not looking for sympathy, but 1 week from today, I'm having a new knee. So I have to be home and ready to go into the hospital to have my knee replaced, because it's been bothering me for some years. So I, by necessity, have to get home, and so that's unfortunate. Now, there's a possibility that Christian might come back, but I need to be home because I've been waiting for this knee operation for some time.
If you want me to come back, I want to see lots of thumbs up and lots of yeah, come back, or nay, go home. Okay, go home, you Canadians. Whatever.
Well, the one thing that they can be really sure of, and they've seen it, I'm sure you've pulled wide on this and you've showed the lake. I mean, we're 500 feet at least from the nest and from the lake shore. It's on the edge of the lake. And lots of people are fairly near the lake. So people are closer to this nest by a long shot than we are. And I don't think we are any bother to this pair at all. When I saw the bird on the point here a few minutes ago, there are people right below it on the point. So these eagles are quite used to people. This is a huge a recreational lake with a huge following of people on it, with boats and kayaks and canoes and the whole thing. So this is not a wilderness area. It's a great recreational area. And as I say, there's 19 pairs of osprey. Now, they've basically already fledged their young. And there's 2 bald eagle nests at the moment. There have been up to 4 bald eagle nests, but it seems to be the ospreys are taking over here more so than the eagles. And that may well be a reflection of how this habitat is actually changing. There's so many fish here, but it may be they're easier caught by ospreys than by eagles. I mean, I have no idea why ospreys would give way, or would take precedent over eagles. But that seems to be what's happened here over the last few years. So that's just how nature goes. I mean, nature does things that we are trying to catch up on what the answers are or the explanations, but we don't always have them.
Yeah, by the way, there's a big comfort here. The Friends of the Redding Eagles are following the nest very closely, yeah. Although it's not live, but FORE is their abbreviation, so you're able to go on their website and follow them.
Wonderful. That's Terry does. Terry Lillier. She's doing postings almost every day. So I'm glad you mentioned that. Terry will be out here. I don't know if it'll be every day, but it'll be most days. I know that. And as it gets closer, she'll probably come out here every day, and they can take pictures from where we're doing, or they have a boat. and so they have the ability to go out on the lake and film it from their boat or from a nearby island. So they're going to be able to give some good options after we leave here.
Right, I just saw that the camera 2 has overheated again and switched automatically to this camera. So I'm glad it's going all automatic. Otherwise, it's impossible to keep up with it. But that's the reason that we suddenly had this far view from here, and I've just zoomed in again. Okay. Wait till it cools down. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, sorry that the eagle isn't. The adults aren't landing here with food, but they obviously get food when it's most easily available to them, and it may well be that it's when the evening gets a little dimmer, maybe they see better into the water, maybe as the day cools, maybe the fish come closer to the surface. When we were out looking at the fish in the lake a few days ago, I was impressed of how many fish there were. There were schools of fish that were all in the 2, 3, 4 pound bracket. A lot of fish in this lake, and schools of them, and so and they weren't very deep. They were 2 to 4 feet. Now that's pushing the edge for an eagle, but they probably on occasion come closer to the surface and make themselves vulnerable.
Sherry's just saying, look, it looks like you have good technology here. Yes, we do. That's quite fortunate. We do actually.
Yes, Christian has some incredible technology and a brain that wraps itself around what appear to be insurmountable obstacles for myself. I don't even like using cell phones, so he's using usually 2 cell phones and 2 cameras, and he's transmitting on Facebook, and he's transmitting simultaneously on YouTube and sometimes on another channel, and he's got all of this working out here from a battery. It's quite amazing. Not many people could make this function the way Christian has brought it all together. I can absolutely guarantee you that. We did a couple of broadcasts with television people here in the last couple of days, and their technology was nothing up to Christian. So I'm pretty impressed with how Christian does this, and you're the lucky recipients of this.
Oh, thank you very much. I really love doing this. Yes, it is true. It's a lot of work, also behind the scenes to get this going. But I can tell you, with the team here that I have, and also the support, of course, of Terry and many others who have been so kind, it wouldn't have been possible. It's quite tough to build this up. Also, the DV store. And the question, of course, here is, let me just see. Yes, Swarm 5050. Have the eagles been fed today? Well, it's very likely. Otherwise, they wouldn't, they wouldn't be lying like this. Or what do you think?
No, I think they were fed the first thing this morning. Even when we got here, their crops weren't indented at all. Their crops had food in them, so they were still digesting something. Maybe they got fed at noon. I mean, we didn't get here until 4 o'clock. So maybe they were fed as recently as noon. The bottom line is I don't see them begging and screaming. If you watched our live cameras up in the Fraser Valley, when the chicks have been without food for 5-6 hours, they let mom and dad know that they're ready for a topping up, and we're not hearing much from these kids yet. So it sounds to me as though they're not really that hungry yet.
Yeah, by the way, Terry, as Eagle Woman has just said, she'll continue to follow it. Of course you will, Terry, we know. You're so dedicated, and thanks for doing all this.
Yeah, and thank you, Terry, for finding this unusual nest structure with 2 eaglets and 1 red tail. I mean, I know, I've seen the expression on your face when you described to us how you realized that what you were looking at was not just eagles and how many eagles, but 2 eagles and a red tail hawk. I mean, there's probably more of these than we know of, but there's not many of them that are actually detected. So I think you did absolutely wonderfully in actually identifying these young chicks, because I gather you were out on the water at the time and probably moving around and were able to get a photo, and then you saw it when you got home and thought, gee, I got to look at that more closely, and then I think you went to the land and put your telescope on it. So yeah, wonderful spotting, Terry. Excellent.
It's okay. They're very quiet. Very quiet.
Yeah.
It's
well,
hot.
it's hot.
Yes, it's hot. That's, by the way, also the reason why we started too late. We had to also accommodate the East Coast and so on. So it's a difficult balance, really.
Yeah, you're right. We started yesterday, or the last time, at 5, and we started an hour later, hoping it would get darker a bit and cooler for them. But it's still not very cool. It's still probably in the high 90s now. So it's warm. It is definitely warm. And there's another thing. They're putting out energy to grow their feathers, but they're not putting out or wasting a lot of energy in fighting the weather in terms of cold. They're not having to generate a lot of energy to keep warm. They're plenty warm. They don't need to waste food on keeping warm. So that's a bit of a saving.
Ostrich 2 question. What do you think the chances are that the hawklet will remain relatively close to the nest area for a significant period of time after fledging? David.
I think it's moderately small. Redtails in most areas, but not in all, but in most areas, migrate. And there's populations, meaning groups of redtails, all over North America, from up in Alaska to Newfoundland, on the east coast of Canada, to Florida, to Southern California, across the center of the plains. There are populations of redtail that do wondrously different things, but the local population usually does something we're beginning to see in banding and tracking results. They generally do somewhat similar thing. In other words, and I'm not sure if this is the case, but the ones like from this region of Northern California might go to Colorado for the winter, and I don't know if that's the case. If somebody is a local red-tailed hawk biologist is listening to this, we'd love them to phone in and give us some more perspective on what this Northern California population of red-tails does. That would be quite wonderful.
Yeah, you just saw, I just zoomed in on one of the eaglets, how hot it was, completely with an open beak and the tongue sticking out to improve the heat exchange. And then moving towards the back, I think that gave you a very good idea how hot it is here.
Yes, I think if I was Mama Eagle, I'd be down having a swim on the beach. I mean, and maybe she's doing that. I mean, eagles often bathe.
David, you just told us the last thing you ever want to do in hot weather is to swim.
I am not a swimming fan, but I said if I was an eagle, I'd like to be down there. I am not a swimmer, so I'm trying to speak on their behalf. I mean,
Very good.
Not only that, I've actually snuck up on eagles that were bathing, and I've caught, I guess it's 3 that were bathing. You wait for them to get really wet, and then you run at them, and they just plainly can't get airborne. And 2 of them I had to go swimming to get them because I had to swim them down, and the other one I ran them along the edge of the shoreline and got them. That's when I was younger and banding them. Yeah.
Okay, I think we've been on the air for 1 hour now, I don't think there's going to be much more movement. So I really thank you very much for being live with us all this time, especially on your special day here. So I'm just going to switch back to camera 1. 1 second, David.
Yeah.
Flip this around.
Yeah,
and my friend David and I,
Yeah.
let's get in the sun. I don't know.
Well,
Yeah, try this. Okay. Yeah, but you can.
you're behind a tree trunk there.
Oh, I'm behind the tree trunk. No, yeah.
That's the problem.
Okay,
You're behind
wait. You know what? I must turn the camera a little bit. Let me just turn it slightly this way.
And then I'm going to have
And
to
then you're
walk
going to
backwards and fall over the
fall
cabling.
over the equipment.
Yeah.
Fall over the equipment. Anyway, so we are going back home tomorrow. It's a long drive back, what, 900 miles or so?
Yeah, it's easily that.
And we really wanted to thank all of you for this incredible time that you spent with us. So.
Yeah, I thank you also. It's been interesting. It's been very exciting to share this, the Reading Eagle Group's Eagle with you. I mean, they never fail to come up with some exciting element. I mean, a few years ago, they had a nest that was in the middle of a highway, and the highway department wanted to take it down, and they had to develop a cone for it so that the birds didn't nest there, and then they built them another nest. And we, in a sense, followed that, and last year we had to build a cone on a nest that one of our government agencies needed to take down, and so we saved the tree, put a cone on it. So in a sense, the Reading Group has pioneered a number of techniques, so it's kind of wonderful.
It's very nice to be here as Canadians, and yeah, so we'll say goodbye to you. We're going to take it easy now, also calm down a bit, and keep on taking pictures for a couple of hours actually, because the weather's very nice, and hopefully there'll be some action again. All of those who have donated something, thank you so much. Really appreciate it, because as I said, the costs are horrific, unfortunately, still, of live streaming. So thank you again to the DVE store. Wonderful to sponsor this with such generosity. Thanks to Terry. Very nice. Thanks to Kit.
And to Kit,
thanks to Jamie,
who's been our wonderful host.
Wonderful host, exactly. Thanks to Jamie. And yeah, thanks to everybody, the Reading Eagle Group here. What was it? The FORE, right? Friends of Reading Eagles. That's right.
Right. Yeah.
And then again to Ross Weatherby for having an interview yesterday.
Who's the biologist,
the biologist
at the recreation center here.
So we've actually really come to love this whole area, and we'll miss you. And next time I'll be live streaming again from Vancouver, and we'll be looking at the three eaglets,
Okay.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
So thank you. Enjoy the view. I'm just going to switch over, and then I'm slowly going to shut down the technology. I'm going to give you a few more moments to enjoy. Thank you, everyone. Oh, wait. Okay, wait, I can do that. Let me just switch over. That's overheated again. It's just amazing how it always overheats. Yeah, by the way, the people here really appreciate that you've been here, and I will just put up the volume so you actually hear how enthusiastic they were about your participation. Let's see if I can get this going. Okay.
Happy 4th of July.
Yeah, happy 4th of July. Okay, now I have to see how to... Okay, now I will just leave it on the nest a while. Oh, there we go. I'm just switching over to the other camera, sorry. There we go. I forgot to switch it over, so you can have one last look at the nest. And then I will thank you anyway to all the YouTube and Facebook friends of all the eagles who have participated. So I'm slowly going to shut down the technology, and it takes quite a bit of effort. So just hang on. Okay, first of all, goodbye to everyone on Facebook, and thank you so much. Seen all your questions, and thank you for watching. My goodness, this thing is so... Okay, there we go. Post-hoc bugger. Okay, so also goodbye to everyone on YouTube now, and thanks so much. Have a lovely